When we look at this graph, right, just like kind of what Lily talked about before, even though these arrows look like they are going down, since this is a trigonometric function, it's not actually going down, it's actually just repeating itself over and over. And I apologize for how poorly this graph looks. Wow, that does not look good at all. It must be like the first graph I've drawn all day. Boom. So it doesn't actually go up or down, it actually just keeps repeating this cycle. Now, just remember that when we're looking at the domain, right, for this trigonometric function, the furthest left, this graph keeps going to the left. And in fact, it also keeps going all the way to the right. So just like in our previous example, our domain is from negative infinity to positive infinity. Furthest left, because again, it keeps going. Next thing we're going to look at is the range. If we look at the lowest our graph goes down, our graph goes down to -3. And it looks like it continues up. It keeps going up, keeps going up, keeps going up, all the way up to +3. And again, since there are no clearly marked empty circles, it is inclusive -3 and 3. Again, that's kind of what we looked at last class. Still the same principles for domain and range. Now, let's look at midline. Does anyone think that they can determine what the midline is of this graph? To be a little bit more specific, make sure, right, y equals 0, right? The midline is still this portion here, right? It's still the x-axis. This is just something, there's not really much mathematically you do to determine the midline. It really is just visual. Well, where's the middle of my graph? And again, since it's a horizontal line, it needs to be in the form of y equals. Excellent job, Zion. Mutiat, thank you also. So we know, again, I have that kind of labeled here. In fact, I'll label it again here, midline. Boom. Now for our amplitude. Does anyone think they can tell me what our amplitude is going to be for this graph? Like what Zion said, essentially for our amplitude, we need to look at how far we go from our midline up to the top of our graph, which is up 1, 2, 3 is our amplitude. And we can check that by going down to it as well. 1, 2, 3. Another way you can find the amplitude, and guys, this is kind of like a little shortcut. If you want to find the amplitude, go from the lowest portion of our graph, and we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Notice we're going from our lowest point to the highest point is 6, right? To find the amplitude, divide that by 2. And that'll work every time, from the lowest point to the highest point, and then we'll divide it by 2, gives us our amplitude. Now, again, what tends to be the most challenging here, especially at the beginning of this, is determining the period of our graph. When we're looking for the period of our graph, we're trying to figure out how long it's going to take to cover and go through all of these values, right? So I found a nice highlighter I can finally use I've been looking for. So notice we start at 0. Does anyone want to take a guess in the chat what our period is going to be here? This graph goes all the way till 9. Again, it goes up and down a lot of times through that. We're actually looking for how quickly it goes through all of the values, which is going to be 2. Notice by the time it goes up and the time it goes down and back up, that would be at 2. So our period is going to be 2. So this kind of quickly covers how we're determining the amplitude, period, domain, and range.